This year marks the 140th anniversary of the first settlement of one of Klamath County's first towns.
And the 4th of July weekend, residents of Bly will kick up their heels in celebration. In tonight's Oregon Trails, Newswatch 12's Ron Brown takes a look at what has held that small town together despite several devastating events over the last century or more.
Might be a little hard to tell today, but this was once quite a bustling town. Today, Bly is about half its biggest population, with many vacant buildings, and many buildings not even here anymore. But it's also one of the oldest towns in southern Oregon. By most accounts, Bly is 140 years old this year.
A postmistress named it, and it was a short for Blydell. And Bly is an Indian word meaning heaven.
The book Oregon Geographic Names says Bly also means a high place or a place upriver. The first post office was established here in 1873 by John Gerhardt, for whom a mountain nearby is named. That was called Sprague River. By 1883, it was changed to Bly.
My grandmother said that her dad would take a wagon to Jacksonville and get supplies, and they had a house where they kept their supplies. She said it was just like going in a store to go in that house and get something.
Jacksonville was the county seat at that time. Well, Bly grew slowly, mostly ranching, until the late 30s, when logging railroads reached eastern Klamath County and timber became king.
Bly was very, very heavily populated, had lots of businesses there, a hotel, several bars, restaurants. They had a telephone company, a barber shop, post offices. I think they even had a bakery at one time.
When Weyerhaeuser moved in, things changed big time. A huge mill and extensive logging operations employed hundreds of people. It also meant a big presence for the Forest Service. This is their ranger station, much of which was built by CCC crews back in the 1930s.
You know, when I was a kid, if someone didn't have a job, it's because they didn't want one. That's not that way now.
We used to catch the school bus, and when we got on the school bus in Ivory Pine, it had already been up to Camp 6. We had standing room only to go to school in Bly.
Then in the 70s, the high school was closed, and students were sent first to Lakeview and later to Bonanza, where they go now.
There were 10 when I graduated, 5 girls and 5 boys.
That would have been,
and I was the next to last class that graduated.
You know, there were some families decided they didn't want their kids to go to Lakeview, so they opted for Bonanza. Of course, the bus ran to Lakeview, so if you didn't have some kind of transportation, that's where you went.
Now it's just a small elementary school. Even the high school gym is empty and for sale.
I think there's 16 kids. It's a web-based school now, and it's mostly computer. There's one teacher for the 1st through 6th, and then they have a kindergarten teacher, and anybody over the 6th grade then has to bus to Bonanza to school.
In the 80s, the mill shut down and is now nothing more than a huge empty lot with a few concrete foundations left.
Well, it got down to the end there when Weyerhaeuser shut down. The only thing left was the ranchers and the Forest Service.
There was like 3 bars going at that time and 3 churches, and it went down to like 1 bar maybe, and now there's none. But there's still 3 churches.
The old Star movie theater has not shown a film in years, but at one time it was a place where memories were made for many kids and families.
We went every Saturday night, cost $0.25 to go, and sometimes we'd pick up pop bottles and beer bottles, so we'd have 25 cents to go to the movies.
One of the biggest events to first hit Bly came near the end of World War II, when a Japanese firebomb was discovered by a Sunday school class on a picnic near Gerhardt Mountain and exploded. Killed were 5 kids from Bly, as well as the minister's wife. Cora Connor was just 16 then and was a weekend telephone operator, but she was sworn by military officials to say nothing, and that was especially hard on her.
In about 2 or 3 hours, the townspeople started gathering out in front of the phone office, and it was very uncomfortable. They yelled things at me and threatened and whatnot, and I couldn't tell. I couldn't even tell my mother what had happened. Couldn't do anything.
Today, a monument marks the site. Not much marks where the high school stood or where the Weyerhaeuser plant was. The old railroad line to town is a biking and hiking trail now. The baseball field, built by Jack Lounsdown and some other volunteers, is now pretty much a pasture.
We've lost so many people and what have you. The town's getting so small, and then Weyerhaeuser pulled out and what have you. They was going to be here forever. I think most of us knew better than that.
And up until a few years ago, the Red Ball stage stopped here several times a week. Never carried too many people, but it did provide package delivery for local residents and businesses between Klamath Falls and Lakeview. That connection is gone now, too.
It's not like it used to be. Bly's kind of become a retirement village. You know, I mean, it's a retirement town.
We're close to good hunting, we're close to fishing, and we're close to our neighbors. It's a good place.
There's no hustle and bustle, and I like the solitude.
Now water is the big concern. With water issues in the basin, the city's well and primary water source could be in jeopardy.
The Bly community here got a letter on their well that feeds all of Bly. I mean, this is the town water supply. They got a letter that said at this time that water does not belong to them to use. And where that goes from there, we don't know.
Like many towns in south central Oregon, Bly has seen better days. The loss of the big Weyerhaeuser mill, the loss of the high school, and most of the elementary school has really dealt a blow to the pride of this community. But some 500 people still call this place home, and if you like peace and quiet, maybe this is the place to be. In Bly, Ron Brown, Newswatch 12.